I hope that we're all looking at the exact same thing right now. If this is, I think we're looking at the double Dorito, which is pretty great. So I'm going to talk to you all. I just did a recording of this. Turns out it did not record how I thought it would. Listen, we're all learning. So I'm going to talk about the double Doritos and in particular the quotations having to do with them. The thought process that I have is that I want y'all to do a double Dorito for two quotations before you've chosen or written about your thesis. So while you're looking at your different topics, there we go. Part of my hair is driving me crazy. Whatever. I don't think I can fix this at the moment, and it's really not that important. Okay, so I want to talk to you all about the quotations that we have and how we should start thinking about them. Before you've chosen or written a thesis, I want you to do at least one of these where you actually take different quotations and what they have to do with anything. And I do want you, for now at least, to fill this out in terms of thematic connections. So let's look at two made-up quotations that I don't have a book currently on me. I've got it in the other room. But I do remember that this happened. So at some point in time, remember when Margaret is at the ball, and Frida comes up to her, and she's just kind of like all over the place. And Margaret asks, "What's your name?" And she goes, "Frida, Frida, my name is Frida." Like, kind of obsessively, she had a wild look in her eye. It depends on how big the quotation is that you want to use. Remember, no more than 10 words. And then finally, after Margarita spends kind of way too much time with her, she tells her, "Get drunk tonight and forget your problems." So I made up a page number. I have no idea if this is accurate. Who knows? Maybe it is. And I just know the book so well. But chances are that's not actually true. So I'm looking at these two quotations, and remember that we've got a number of different paper topics that we can use. And I want to make sure that you all are using paper topics according to themes. But before you've even decided on what you want to write about, I want you to think about the themes that this connects to. So I'm just going to do a quick run through as a model of what I think this should look like. And I am expecting you to do essentially the same kind of thing. You can print these out if you have them, if you have printing ability at home. Otherwise, you can just kind of do like a screenshot. I made a screenshot of this, and I'm going to send it to you all and put it on PowerSchool. And you all can put it on Google Docs and just kind of mess with it a little bit. Or I think that maybe there's some extra handouts that I may have handed to you. Y'all can use them there. But let's talk about what this looks like. So Frida, my name is Frida. Right now I'm going to fill in the context of this and why this is important. A haggard young woman introduces herself to Margarita, who pays her special attention when she asks her name. She responds, she's elated, and responds, blah, 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 blah. So this is essentially how I would introduce this quotation, just to have a little bit of context for what we're talking about. This also helps us to understand. We don't know yet who Frida is. That, I think, would be a really good place to really talk about this, but get drunk tonight and forget your problems. But this right here is just the introduction, if y'all can see. Hopefully this is working on Screencastify. Truly, I have no idea. We'll find out. Anyway, so then go to the get drunk tonight and forget your problems. Margarita who is clearly touched and concerned by the punishment that Frida receives, while the cafe owner is not even present at the hell ball. Wants her to feel some sort of relief from her constant torture. Now, I think the other thing that we need to think about is why exactly did this happen to Frida, and what does this say? So remember that I think one of the themes that's really prevalent is the theme of housing shortages. And I think that a really good idea, like especially if you want to rewrite this, because remember, you will be rewriting these a lot, especially as you're thinking. This is basically a brainstorming space for you all to do this. So write this with a pen and paper, pencil and eraser. But another way that you can introduce this quotation is to say, Frida, having no access to housing, food, or medical care for her child, strangled the infant with the handkerchief that gets handed to her every night at the ball. I think the reason that I kind of like this more, oh, here I go. Just deleting it. Here we go. The reason I like this more is because this provides the context for what's ultimately going to be very important, which is explaining and explicating the thematic connection. Meanwhile, you all can already see where I'm going with this. I'm going to focus on the housing shortage question and the food shortage question. Margarita, who's clearly touched and concerned by the punishment Frida received. So Frida receives the punishment because she couldn't take care of the kid that the cafe owner didn't even care to think about. The thematic connection, what do these two quotations have in common? This is where you need to kind of start thinking about this. Like, I think on one side you can start saying, Frida has no choice because of the pain that living in poverty would subject her infant child to. I think this is a really big part of it, that there's not just a food and housing shortage, but this is an indicator of a lot of poverty and the fact that she has no other options. So this is kind of like coming up to the theme right here, whereas if we were to connect this to the same theme, if you also choose, then you can say Margarita in agony that Frida is punished for this, wants her to forget through an overindulgence in alcohol, which was, I don't know, historically an escape for those living with food housing shortages in USSR. I think like it's fine for you. I mean, you can see that this is a little bit long. It's too long to like put exactly where I want to put it. Well, let me see. You guys know how much I like things to fit in. Okay, perfect. So this way we can see that there's a connection here. We're going towards the same thing. And then right here, I want you all to start thinking about what do they have in common? Like what is the common thread here? The same food and housing shortages that affected Frida's decision and her ultimate punishment were not something that Margarita was subjected to, but she understands them well. Because remember, we talked about this too when we were reading chapter 19, that Margarita grew up, or she's married to a guy, she's deeply unhappy, but she's married to a guy and they're doing perfectly fine in an apartment. I think that there's a way for you to talk about the material world shortages, like food and housing shortages, whereas Margarita has a very strong shortage of love and compassion in her life when she's married to this person. Or even you can talk about how she understands this, because this is such a universal issue for any woman who finds herself pregnant, that Margarita understands this on a much deeper level, which is the thing that leads to the conflict between her and Behemoth, right? The reason she's upset with Behemoth is because he doesn't understand, and Behemoth is thinking about this from a purely like administrative, legal point of view. Like, well, the shop owner isn't the guy who killed the child. That's like very, like legal-esque. And what Margarita is saying is like, but he was responsible, and she was the one who ultimately had to make the decision, because she's ultimately the one who has to feed him, and the kid had no food, there's housing shortages, etc. So this is where you all need to start this is where your thought process kind of comes in, and you should start thinking about how you want to connect these two ideas. Then finally, how does this contribute to your thesis and argument? You don't know yet, but you're getting to a point. So I think this is where you all should kind of take the time to have a preliminary, just spitball some ideas about a thesis. right? Like this quotation reveals the methods through which the Soviet state would punish people for trying to, I don't know, the Soviet state would punish people for trying to take some agency in a life that the state controls. The hellish punishment and behemoth response are indicators of that callous application of justice. Whereas Margarita's response is a very human, compassionate application of, I don't know, of mercy. One of the reasons that I specifically talk about mercy here is because if we're talking about, I don't know, parallels between Margarita and Christ, I think that's a really important thing, is that she shows mercy where other people don't necessarily show mercy. And even though Woland also shows mercy, he needs to be asked for it, right? So, and this is completely unsolicited. You all see where I'm going with this? I think like here you can actually write notes all over the place, like how does this contribute to your thesis and argument, etc. I want you all to do this quotation thing before you actually settle on a thesis, because let me move this right here. Hopefully that helps. I want you all to think about this before you actually settle on a thesis, because I want this to be where your ideas are going. The big picture and idea, that's up to you. That's how you want to protect your thought processes as you're going through this. So hopefully this all recorded and you all can see this, because I think that it's a good way to think about this. So remember, I want at least one of these before you even submit a thesis to me. So that's going to be due on, I think the 20th. The thesis is due on the 24th, so this is going to be due on the 20th. Does that sound good to everybody? Let me see if this recorded correctly, and I will post it online as our preliminary lecture. Ask me questions if you want, and remember, I'll ask you to decide on whether or not you want to do appointment sessions during academic support. Okay, thank you so much, everybody.